Well, hey there team, welcome back to the channel, welcome to my overview of Visions of Mana. So I do overviews on this channel and I have a little spiel. It's a little bit different this time. I actually played a bit of this a couple of weeks ago when it came out, but the nature of the beast being we're kind of in release season and it's just not going to slow down till the end of the year. I'll be honest, it slipped through the cracks and I forgot to do a video on it. So having it pop back up in my mind share, I played a few more hours this morning just to refamiliarize. So a little bit longer than the normal overview, but for those not across it, yeah, I just look at the first 2 hours of a game because it's a Steam refund window. The idea being I give a game a fair go for a first impression and I can put it on my radar and show it to you. And look, this game is really quite brilliant and it's definitely a Square Enix JRPG, right? And that might make you just not be interested. I can understand that. It's not for everybody. And I wouldn't say it's doing anything radically different, but it's solid, man. It's really solid. And I kind of get a bit jealous of how the other side lives. Don't get me wrong, I love JRPGs, especially younger me. I'm actually a huge Secret of Mana original fan, but even things like Grandia 2 might be one of my favorite games of all time. And early Tales games as well, Ni no Kuni, like I've got a background, I like all this stuff, but for whatever reason, and partially probably the nature of the current industry in this channel, I haven't really stayed with JRPGs as much as I probably should in recent years. And I feel like I probably represent a segment of the population where we are kind of attention span destroyed, overstimulated, with our dopamine receptors off the scale. What am I getting at? Well, what I'm saying is that this, like most JRPGs, it's very stereotypical, it's very slow burn, right? I've probably put 3 or 4 hours into it now, and I'm only really just starting to get an idea of where it's going. The combat took a very long time to go from very simple to showing its hand at what's going on. There's actually a pretty nuanced kind of way to build your characters, which I'm excited to play more of. But it also has that classic cutscene, get out of it, walk 10 feet into another cutscene, right? And you might groan and roll your eyes, but maybe you could have the epiphany that I'm sort of having at the moment, that we've kind of been conditioned in many ways by the modern market to become kind of spoilt and low attention span, I guess. I feel like this game probably would go for frigging 50 hours and you'd probably enjoy every second of it too if you were willing to block everything else out and give it a go. Anyway, look, that's my spiel and my pitch so far. It seems very solid, in some ways very safe or stereotypical, but also doing some cool and interesting stuff, especially when it comes to the combat character building. I did brush over briefly that I have a background, Secret of Mana, that sort of stuff. This has some throwback, callback stuff, like the little rabbit monsters are in here. In fact, a lot of the character design, or creature design rather, is from like original Secret of Mana. And like I even played Seiken Densetsu 3, which is the sequel to Secret of Mana, and had to emulate it and everything like that. So I'd say I'm a fan. And there are some mechanics they tried to make work, like the magic circle thing. I don't know what else to call it, but that was a product of its time, controller based, trying to get menus to work in a different time. But yes, I suppose you could argue that Secret of Mana was known for having this radial menu system, which was quite inspired, but it kind of doesn't really work very well here. The combat is real time, you're in your open world map, and then when you go into your wandering monster thing, instead of going to a turn-based strategy thing, I know that's not Secret of Mana, I know that's more Final Fantasy or more just traditional, but the pulling up the circle does actually seem a little bit jarring, how just time stops everything. Now I get it, yeah, okay, sure, that's what the original did, but I suppose times and sensibilities have changed. But the point I'm getting at is the references to the original, the roots, whatever you would want to call it, the DNA even, if you could even argue Secret of Mana really has any DNA other than just being one of the early games of these sorts. It's just got some throwback stuff and it plays a lot more like a Tales game or, something like Ni no Kuni or whatever comes to mind. The story's pretty standard. You're playing as this soul guard dude, kind of a bodyguard for chosen people that are chosen by their spirit that protects their village, and then he's got to escort them to the mana tree, presumably to get sacrificed in it. Well, they're not really saying it that way because it's all a little bit more PG rated, but it has shown flashes of, people shying away from the calling as the chosen one, or other ones, blindly wanting it with all their heart, and then other people like questioning why on earth would you want to do that. So it's cool. It seems to be opening up some interesting think pieces. And so essentially you're this little fellowship, you're collecting all these sacrificial lambs and escorting them across the the countryside from biome to biome. It's a clever conceit, and it seems to be working fairly well. With the combat, it's literally just light attacks with some heavy attacks thrown in. As you pick up some extra characters, they will have their own flavor. Like I picked up this chick from the Wind Village, and she's got one of those sort of dragon creature things, kind of fluffy Falcors from the original game, but this is like an infantile small one, and you know, her heavy attack is basically him getting involved and doing some gentle attacks, but I think he also has a tanking presence in combat as well. I just unlocked this other dude. It's a bit of a Puss in Boots kind of anthropomorphic cat fencer dude, and he's got like a counter with his heavy, so if you time that right, you can counter attack. So they've got their own little nuances within that basic skill set, but where they shine is where you get these soul vessel things, which they're essentially special weapons, and it's almost pseudo throwback homage to the original games, because that was a big part of that, was equipping different weapons for different move sets as required. So with this, equipping, well, like for example, the starting boomerang that you get essentially transforms your character's class into something else altogether. Different weapons, different look. They look different in cutscenes. It's pretty cool. But you can spend like essentially an XP point allocation for advancing their skills with that weapon class transform, and it's different for each person. So the main character Val, if you put this boomerang on him, not only does it give him the boomerang attack, which is just sort of a generic extra attack everyone would get from that, so if you equip it to one of the other guys, they'll still be able to throw this boomerang, but he will have his own unlockable skills. In his case, it's more like buffs, you know, allows you to put a fire buff on an ally's weapon, that sort of thing. Whereas if you give it to one of the other characters, the skills that they will unlock from equipping it are different again. And this is all sort of plot gated as well. So I've pretty much just equipped it to the main dude and leveled it up as much as it will let me do it at the moment. And then beyond that, you can also equip little extra mana seeds to characters, which will give them, you know, basic abilities like fireballs, things like that. And the mana economy works out well in that you can pick up mana while you're fighting. You kill dudes, they'll drop orbs. It's not just healing, it's mana as well. And then you've got a rudimentary AI system to control your party members, and you can sort of just tell them, you know, be stingy with the mana, or at the moment I've got them running on like a 50-50 split, and it's pretty explicit, it lays it all out. But that's where the synergy starts to come together, where you build up a party. You start equipping them with things that will allow them to cast spells, because none of them really passively inherently have spells at all, full stop. You give them these special mana weapons, you equip these seeds, all of a sudden they start to get this suite of spells. And for me, it becomes less about in the moment freezing it to pull up the wheel to cast one spell in a frantic fight, and more about doing something like telling the AI, hey, don't let your mana go below 50, other than that, go nuts. And then now it's really starting to come together, where I'm essentially playing a main character and I'm just doing some attacks, and maybe I'm jumping to other characters, and my AI partners are starting to go ballistic, just throwing off fireballs and spells and buffs, and the party's starting to come together. So that's kind of cool. It's less about, at least for the way I'm playing it, it's kind of less about what I'm doing and more about the tactical execution on my strategic layer for how I've built the party around me. And like I said, it probably took 3 hours before it really started to show that that's where this game is going. And it's cool. I like it a lot, actually, and it really does make me wonder what's a dozen hours from now look like. Anyway, I think it's really good. I'm really enjoying it. But like I said, if you are getting it strictly because you're a Secret of Mana fan, I don't know if that's the play. I would say if you're interested in it as a solid modern JRPG, warts and all, right? With the perceived negatives of maybe being a bit slower, I don't think it's a bad thing. I think it's probably a good thing, actually, that we all should play a JRPG from time to time just to keep us grounded. Then yeah, I would highly recommend this. Peripherally, I was following, there's a bit of drama. I think the main studio that made this actually shut down on the day of release. You see stuff like this happen in the gaming industry. It's obviously some sort of backrooms politicking, as best as I can understand it, and it may be a bigger thing of things to come, but I think NetEase was the parent company putting the money into the developer here, but I'm not sure where Square Enix sits in it, because I think Uka Studios is the dev, and NetEase is being fairly open that their interests are starting to move away from JRPGs and more into the emerging Chinese game market, which sounds like smart money to me from what I've seen and how things are going. But I wonder what that means for like Square Enix and JRPGs in the future. Because it's a great game. It is a really good game. And we could do with more of them, obviously. But if the money moves on for money reasons, I wonder what happens. Anyway, I guess we'll keep an eye out. There's my overview. There's my thoughts. It's great. It's about as good as you could expect. But I don't know if it's necessarily going to change your opinion if you're kind of, set against or for these sort of games. Anyway, team, I just leave it there for the time being. I'll catch you guys on the next one.